To me, all mountain is almost like a dated term. All mountain was a category that was, it was a what do you call it? A subcategory on MTBR, because they had all these categories and they made all mountain because there were these bikes that didn't fit in any of their categories. Well, now the trail category is so fleshed out that like all mountain is still there, but it's just like, it's like trail bikes with a lot of travel.
Yeah, it's almost like XC, short travel trail, long travel trail, enduro.
And that long travel trail is the trail category has eaten up what isn't a cross country race bike, but isn't, longer travel, and it's kind of taken up all mountain almost.
What's interesting is like a little bit ago you were talking about how an XC bike was kind of your standard bike. It wasn't really known as an XC because maybe that's what was the most common trail. Whereas maybe all mountain was something specific, but now trails are like, that's maybe the middle of the road. And like the difference between a mountain bike and an XC bike is changing. Like I wonder if enduro bike is just a race version of an all mountain bike, and it's kind of like, it's negating the need for the term anymore. It's like, well, this is a race bike now, and that's an enduro bike versus like, you're doing all mountain riding, you're just paying $9,000 for it, like.
Yeah. But there's still subtle differences. I think some of the enduro race bikes you see, they do have extremely slack angles. I mean, the head angles are pushing they're pushing numbers that we used to race downhill on.
Yeah, 64, 65.
It's like, whereas if you want to say, well, what's the difference between an all mountain bike and an enduro bike? I would say it really has to do with those angles, especially that head angle, the amount of mechanical trail on the bike. The downhill, or the enduro bike, the thoroughbred enduro race bikes are going to be really slack, like almost downhill slack. And the all mountain bikes are going to be more in that 66 to 67 range if you're talking about a 27.5. And 29 even now, we're pushing into that 67, 66 category. There's some 150 travel 29ers that have 66-degree head angles.
So depending on someone's background, an enduro or all mountain bike, if they're more comfortable with DH or motorcycles, they might be more pumped on an enduro rig. And if they're coming from maybe an XC background, they might be more pumped on a little bit steeper all mountain, or more you'd call it general use.
Yeah,
maybe.
And I would say the all mountain bike or the long travel trail bikes, there's still some considerations and some emphasis on climbing.
Yeah.
I can remember back when we first designed the very first horse thief pre-split pivot, the idea of doing a 29er with 120 mils of travel and like a 69 head angle was like, oh my God. Like, you got to put a Fox 34 on that thing, and it's got to have 140 mils of front travel. And like, it was a big bike. It was bordering on what we'd say all mountain, but that was at the time. Yep. Now fast forward to 2017, and 120 millimeter travel 29er is like the bread and butter. It's almost considered short travel. It's starting to be labeled as short travel trail because we're putting 67.5 to 67-degree head angles on the same chassis with really good suspension components and really good frame design. So it's like, to me, that 29 and 120 is really versatile. 27.5 in a 130, 140-ish seems to be extremely versatile. And then you can go up and travel in either wheel size, and you start pushing into that, the trail category up into all mountain. And then you get into all mountain, and then it kind of starts getting fuzzy with, as you add travel over 150, is it an enduro bike or is it a trail or all mountain bike?
It's much less defined than trail and XC.
I think if you throw it back to when MTBR made the all mountain category, right? That was a rider that was not a cross-country racer. And there was more of a focus on that robust bike, a little bit more travel. Descending was a key to the experience, the ride experience. There may have been some light shuttling involved. And I think that as the bikes have gotten better and the trail category has gotten wider, that all mountain category is still that long travel trail where the focus is still on descending. The climb is a necessary evil if they need to do it, but they're not afraid to, you know, find other means to get there if they need to, you know, whether it's take a shuttle or a chairlift or a gondola
I don't think
or something.
it's that much different than when we talk about trail, and like you mentioned, like it's all about the descent, but part of it is because the descent is there. You know, where we ride around here, it's pretty flat, so
Yeah.
like that it's just not there. So like I think the motivations behind why they ride are really similar to trail. Like it's similar of how trail is to XC. You know, all mountain is to enduro, where enduro being a race format, and just like their motivations being a little different, more versatile, being able to ride a lot of different stuff, but like there's going to be more descending, so like that's going to be the focus of
That's
you know,
just
their
sort of that
experience.
rider's priority
Yeah,
list.
That's kind of what I see as all mountain. It's like the image of the local like ride, whereas around here that's an XC ride, but in Breckenridge that's an all mountain.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, do we want to get the pickups out and shuttle? Nah, let's just ride up and ride down, or like we'll cut a trail and we'll make our own trail down or something, or there's a road up and we'll cut the trail down. It's just like owning what you have, you know. And it happens to be all mountain and a mountain.
But there's a focus on longer travel. You start getting into like that rider may or may not be riding flat pedals. Half of them might be riding flat pedals. They got some light body armor, you know, on knee pads and stuff because they're getting after it on the downhills. But yeah, they still ride.
I think your point about priority is really valid, because I think you could have two different riders riding the same bike on the same terrain, and we could lump one of them into trail and the other one into all mountain, just based on how they're riding that terrain and which aspect of it they're prioritizing more. Are they prioritizing the sort of the whole experience and the climbing, or are they suffering through the climbs to shred the descents?
Yeah, and they're going to be the rider that's, if there's a natural double on the trail, they're going to be trying to hit that natural double and make that gap. Yeah. Whereas the trail rider or the guy that came from the XC vein of things, or lady, they're not looking to make that double, but they're enjoying that descent. Yep. Whereas that all mountain guy, like he's, you know, they're like, I'm going to send that. I'm going to make it.
It's ownership of their local trails. So someone, like the same way that people ride to the trails here, it's like, hey, I'm going to ride the whole mountain. Like, I want to own this mountain. Like, I don't want to just do that. Like, if there's competition among local riders, like that guy rode down it and rode up it and then rode around it and rode down the backside and then got a beer and rode back up the f***er. You know, it's like, like that's kind of like what I see all mountain. It's like, you know.
That was really good, and then you dropped the F-bomb.
That's why it was good.
Yeah.